Fratton Park. But we could have seen plenty more of this around here, had an extravagant plan for a 36,000 stadium and 750 new homes had got off the ground. But 2007 was far from the only year or regime at Pompey when a stadium relocation plan was unveiled. As the Dockyard Stadium failed to convince both the council and the MOD, just months later the club changed their aspirations to another left field site, this time in the northern end of Portsmouth Harbour, and it would have included a 10,000-seater indoor arena for concerts and exhibitions. But all this was put on hold when the financial crisis hit the UK a decade ago, and not long after Pompey was sold. You could say that either of these two sites would have seen the let's move off Portsea Island idea take on a whole new dimension. But a stunning gateway to the city it could have been right there on Horsey Island. On to the retail area then at North Harbour. At the turn of the 90s, this was then a row of derelict houses and spare land on the A27, and a place Pompey did consider as an option. But permission was never granted, and the large Tesco and other stores were built here instead. Although, as this part of the A27 is called Southampton Road, I dare say this was an address not permissible for our fans either. Other than the floating Dockyard Stadium, which we featured earlier on, one of the other well-known proposals over the years has been here at Farlington at the playing fields, where back in 1993 the club unveiled a blueprint project called Parkway Stadium. It would have included out-of-town retail as well. Now, out-of-town stadiums always have fans feeling rather conflicted, and especially somewhere like Portsmouth, where as an island city it's somewhere that's got such a strong and proud identity, so it was always one of those projects where a lot of people were unsure of. But in the end, one of the selling points was the wonderful access here by road. You've got the A27 behind me over there, and on the other side here you can probably hear, I think there's a train going past at the moment. Well, they were going to actually build a station here at Farlington, which would have added even better access. So what happened in the end was it went to a very lengthy public inquiry after opposition from local residents, traders, environmentalists, and of course the Brent Geese factor. And then at the end of this inquiry, after well over 18 months, Pompey were told the word no. And now, some 25 years later, the age-old stadium saga continues. You know, even as long ago as the 70s, the old city airport site over there was considered somewhere that Pompey could have moved to. And that's long before the days of the Taylor Report making it a necessity that we get now. You know, how long has this saga been going on? I knew someone as well back in the 90s, not long after Parkway had got rejected. He was from up north, new to the area at the time, and he couldn't believe, he was amazed that the council haven't made it their business for the club to get ring-fenced some piece of land that they can move to. He said if that was up north, that's what you'd see. That's the difference between down here and up there. Now, look, I'm not going to get into politics between local football clubs and councils, but that aside, the most fundamental problem here is that it's absolutely land-starved. It's an island city. In fact, we're talking of a congested cul-de-sac, and really green space itself is at a premium. So what I want to know is there really anywhere else, assuming that acquiring land was not a problem, that we could relocate to? Going back to our roots would be the sentimental option, as this ground is where Royal Artillery, one of the predecessor clubs for Portsmouth Football Club, played in the 1890s. And due to its close proximity to the sound of the Guildhall clock, it is here that the story of the famous Pompey chimes dates back to. Sandwiched between Portsmouth's main two railway stations and within touching distance of the Isle of Wight ferry terminal, public transport links would be superb. Plus, the bars and eateries of Gunwharf Quays and the Guildhall Walk on either side would certainly prove popular to both home and away fans. But with the main shopping centre at Commercial Road less than a mile away, traffic congestion on this side of the city could prove a massive sticking point. Then of course, on Burnaby Road are the historic English heritage King James's and Lamport Gates. So to retain them would mean compromising the sports facilities of the neighbouring land occupied by the MOD and the city's ever-expanding university. And not forgetting that this ground is used by the United Services Portsmouth Rugby Football Club and the Royal Navy Rugby Union, unless a new stadium was used for both football and rugby. Well, here is the former Portsmouth Greyhound Stadium site, on the opposite side of Tipner Lake to Horsey Island that I drove past earlier, and since its demolition in 2012, some Pompey fans in favour of another gateway to the city idea have wondered if dogs could be replaced by football. A big plus point to this option is the neighbouring park and ride, but with Tipner being a residential area, street parking would become stretched. So it's likely the park and ride would need expanding, consuming precious land needed for the stadium. The additional junction to the M275 that opened a few years ago is also a mixed blessing. It does provide direct access to this area of the city, but would promise to be a real bottleneck on match days if a stadium was constructed here. Well, here at King George Playing Field at Cossam, we're just off of Portsea Island, and it has superb road access with the A27 in the distance behind me, and over there you've got the A3 which takes you on and off of Portsea Island. And just a few minutes walk that direction as well, you've got Cossam Railway Station, so it would seem like the perfect place to build a new stadium. But then a minute, isn't there a covenant on this place which says it must be used for recreational purposes? Well, of course, a new football stadium would be that. But with so much emphasis at the moment on people keeping fit and staying healthy, surely the last thing they would want to do was see all these football pitches that are usually here disappear. Adjacent to Hilsey Railway Station is Portsmouth Rugby Club and the Roco Health Club, and by the houses in the distance is Pompey's own training ground, thanks to the magnificent revival under the Supporters Trust, so perhaps another possibility on Portsea Island. But if Pompey transformed this entire area into a new football stadium, there would be the same issues as the other three recreational facilities that I featured today. Fratton Park, the home of Portsmouth Football Club, the heartbeat of Portsea Island for many people. But the stadium has become more and more antiquated over the years, and none more so than in recent years the already limited 21,000 capacity has been reduced to just under 19,000 due to the very stringent health and safety laws. But what is it exactly that has made the ground so difficult to be redeveloped over the years? What restrictions possibly could there be? Well, for starters, behind here you can probably just about make out the south stand, and in front of it you've got a row of houses here on Carisbrooke Road which are flush against it. Then at the Milton End of the ground we have Specs Lane here, and behind that a row of houses in Alverstone Road, which has always made restrictions for this end of the ground for anything to be developed. We still have an ancient light factor in terms of the height of a roof being put on any facility at this end of the ground. There's a substation here behind the north stand which would need to be rehoused. When the redundant Fratton goodyard was finally redeveloped in the early 2000s, this included the construction of Fratton Way as a link road, with the temporary car park between the road and the Fratton end earmarked for stadium expansion. However, due to Pompey's dramatic decline and near extinction in the 5 years after winning the 2008 FA Cup, it is no surprise that any redevelopment has not occurred. And since 2015, a new Tesco store on the right of this picture now occupies that site. But a small section of land between the store car park and the Fratton end is still available for Pompey. So that only really leaves the space we have here behind the north stand, and even then that would mean submerging this car park. There's all sorts of plans you see on the internet from people as to how a stadium could work, one that's fit for 2018 and not least of all with a much bigger capacity than this. And it's open to opinion as to what size the new stadium should be. Now, personally I think that 26,000 would be quite an optimal amount. When we were in the Premier League we were getting gates of 20,000, but then that's all we could actually fit into here. Now if the ground did hold 30,000+, it would get filled in some occasions, but then it's doing it week in, week out, and we won't be rattling around in the stadium. Plus of course there is a small matter of trying to get back into the Championship first, and sustaining ourselves. So for me that is a suitable size I would go with. Now, I actually do wonder as well how many people would watch this and think, well, yes, there could be some other sites we could relocate to that I haven't actually mentioned today, but I can't see where realistic there is. And even the ones I've looked at, I can't realistically see how a new stadium would be able to work there, other than possibly at Tipner. But then, are we not swapping one residential area for another? So, as well as the sentiment, the tradition, the atmosphere, and of course the popularity of matchday pubs in the vicinity, what Pompey fan would want to leave Fratton Park? So for me, I implore any fan or anyone else connected to the club to actually look at this video and see why I really feel the future has to be at Fratton Park. Until next time, a very good day to you all, and play up Pompey.